Don't you draw the queen of diamonds, boy. She'll beat you if she's able. You know the queen of hearts is always your best bet. It seems to me some fine things have been laid upon your table, but you only want the ones that you can't get. Desperado, oh, you ain't getting no younger. Your pain and your hunger, they're driving you home. And freedom, oh freedom.
Exhilarating. Thank you all for getting out of bed. Holiday weekend, I get that. And you got dressed, cleaned up, and here we are. Along with our folks who are in their jammies or whatever, on the couch with their tea and coffee. It's a great day, and I was saying in our opening prayer this morning, not that my mental health is so delicate as to be affected by 40 days and 40 nights of clouds and rain. I'm really very grateful for blue skies today, so I like that affirmative prayer that you just sang. Angie mentioned that this coming Sunday, Paula Land will be hosting the discussion group Half Hour of Power. So we've been on a roll the last few weeks, sort of catching up with some of the powers that have already been studied and discussed in the group. The 12 powers is a concept about which Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore wrote decades and decades ago. And what we're talking about are divine faculties that each of us came into our little skin suits embodying. And according to Fillmore, each of our divine faculties has an associated disciple, a color, and a body point. Today, we're going to talk about the faculty of divine power. So I'm very excited about it. We have a very dense, meaty message. We're going to talk about the basics of divine power, also known as mastery or dominion. So you'll hear me use those terms interchangeably. We'll talk about the basics. We'll talk about what those factors about divine power or dominion mean. And we'll talk about how to apply it, which is always really important in Unity, and the levels of consciousness from which we apply this faculty. And finally, the key, divine power is the key to something very, 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 very sought after and important. Anybody guess what that key is? What would divine power have to do with? We'll find out. So, our disciple, well, let's start with our color. Purple, the one purple object I owned, I found in my closet. And I like to do it in this order. The color is purple, the disciple is Philip, and the body point is the throat, the base of the tongue, actually. So let us put our fingers to our throat and just like a little om or a little feel that vibration. That's what we're talking about today, is activating and getting in tune with this divine vibration. So here's the definition of our faculty of dominion. It is our ability to have dominion and mastery over what Fillmore calls our sense consciousness, which is basically our beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and words. Mastery over our beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and words. So in other words, this faculty of power or dominion is about being conscious of our beliefs, feelings, thoughts, and words. And it's very much about choosing how we manage all of that. Anybody familiar with that phrase, think before you speak? Is anybody really good at applying that? What was that, Jim? Was that it? So let's start with a quote from the great Fillmore. He says, from divine mind, which is another term or aspect of God's spirit source, from divine mind, man inherits power over the forces of his mind. In truth, inherits power over all ideas, which is really big, really huge. He says the power center in the throat controls all the vibratory energies of the organism. Controls all the vibratory energy. It is the open door between the formless and the formed worlds of vibration pertaining to the expression of sound. When Jesus said, "The words I have spoken unto you are spirit and are life," he meant that through the spoken word, he conveyed an inner spiritual quickening that would enter the mind of the recipient and awaken the inactive spirit and life. Vernon, Audrey, you're in the prayer room today. Isn't that what prayer is all about? Is quickening that activity and that divine vibration. So this power swings open all the doors of spirit, mind, and body. When we activate this power, which is to say we are putting the energy, the vibration of source into motion, we're also incorporating, when we're using it in a super powerful way, we're incorporating our divine faculty of faith, which is in the very center of the brain, and we're incorporating our divine faculty of imagination, our third eye, which Paula will cover this coming Sunday. So the reason all three of these come together is faith. You know, remember Fillmore talked about swings open the door from the formless world, what we know in metaphysics as the absolute realm. So faith is our ability to bring divine ideas from God mind, from divine mind, into form in this realm, in our earthly realm. And we use our imagination to give shape and form to that divine idea. A divine idea comes to us often like just out of the blue. It happens with me a lot in water, like shower or brushing my teeth or, being by a lake or by the ocean. Divine idea comes in and we get the nutshell of it. Sometimes, but not always, we get all of the how-to or all of the steps. And that's what imagination is about, is imagining the outcome, the end result, and then through faith and through power, bringing that into form. Does that make sense? So this ability to transform energy from the absolute realm, from Godland, to the earthly realm is implanted in every human being at the onset of existence. We all have this ability, which is a very cool thing, because I don't feel like a lot of us are in conscious touch with this ability. In his book, How to Use Your 12 Gifts from God, William Warch touches on the crux of accessing and using our faculty of power. He says that we access dominion or power in the silence. And it's in that realization, plugging into divine source, when we realize that we are the engine, the vehicle of power, and we accept that in our consciousness, here's the cool part. Divine energy arranges itself to form in the outer according to our realization. Can I get an amen? Can I get a yahoo? How cool is that? According to our realization that we are the vehicle of power, we manifest in the outer realm. So when we're talking about using our faculty of power, we're really talking about using creative life force. Is anybody familiar with the part of the creation story in Genesis that there's a whole bunch of verses that start with, "And God said"? Anybody familiar with that? This is the metaphysical, beyond the physical. It's the spiritual aspect of the power to speak creation into being. And God said, "Let there be light." And we have the power to say, "Let there be light," or "Let there be dark." I could unplug that. And before I unplug it, I would say, "Let there be dark." And before I plug it in, I would say, "Let there be light." How powerful am I? Because I figured out that electricity is an energy that's all around me, and all I have to do is plug into it. So when we speak the word, we name the form that spirit energy will take. And did you know we name everything? What is this? How do we know that? We agreed to it. And when we were very young, someone taught us, hot. Remember that, Kate, with Lulu? Hot. So we name everything. Lectern, altar, flower. We name every experience, from absolutely stellar, wonderful, to the most horrific thing ever. That's pointed out in these creation stories because when God did the spit and the dust and made Adam, and then the rib and made Eve, that's a whole nother message. That's very metaphysical. So when humankind appeared in skin suits on the earth, God said, "Here's all of this and here's all of that, and you name it. You have the dominion to name it." That's bestowing on us this power of the creative force. So the key to managing how we express our beliefs, thoughts, and feelings is to activate this faculty of divine power. There's a metaphysical process involved, and it's one of the New Thought trinities. It's called mind, idea, expression. So as we're activating this faculty of dominion, we are plugging into and aligning with divine mind, yes? And out of divine mind comes divine idea. And thought is form of divine idea. I could make a really cool piece that people can put stuff on and you can see through it. And it's called a plexiglass lectern. That's divine idea into formed thought. And then the word is the expression coming into form. Mind, idea, expression. So here's the, I was going to say tricky part. Here's the complex part. A true metaphysician would tell us that using our power of dominion, we give shape and form to the conditions in which we live. if we are living in wholeness and health, if we are living with medical maladies or dis-ease, if we are living in, if we're floating in money like we don't know what to do with it all, or if we're living what I used to call by the skin of my teeth, a metaphysician would tell us that we are creating the conditions in which we live. So who among us is not completely pleased with their lives just now? What the metaphysician says, and I can't remember if it was Fillmore or Pearson, what the metaphysician says, elevate your thinking. Take dominion over life by activating this amazing faculty of power. So we could fly over this idea and go on to the next thing. However, this is a topic, a discussion in almost every single one of my spiritual counseling sessions. So let's dig deep for a moment. Through using our power of dominion, I give shape and form to the conditions in which I live. So let that vibrate in us. I give shape and form to the conditions in which I live. Can we say that together? I give shape and form to the conditions in which I live. It sounds very simple, but it's kind of complicated. It seems clear, but I know that it can be misinterpreted, and I know that it ruffles feathers. One of the common questions that I get is, so I created this heart disease, cancer, diabetes, whatever the condition is. Or in a session that I had several days ago, someone was talking about their personal situation, and they were referring to the negative aspect of something, and then they said, but we don't talk about that in Unity, right? Is negative, which we've named it, or dis-ease, which we've named, is that a part of our life experience? Do we create everything that occurs in our lives? Maybe. Who thinks we create everything that occurs in our lives? Who thinks we don't create everything that occurs in our lives? Who doesn't know? So, roughly a third, which is very cool. Trust me, we had hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, my friend Reverend Aaron and I, in the ministerial program about this very topic. So, here's where I've landed so far. I'm not aware that we create everything that is in our lives. There's my consciousness, and then there's the collective consciousness, yes? Life brings it. That's one of my favorite phrases that I like to say. And as far as I can tell, what life brings is almost always out of my control. Where I do have dominion or power is what I name what life presents to me. What do I name it? What's my belief about it? What's my feeling and thought about it? And that is all determined by what I choose to believe, to think, and to feel, and how I choose to respond. That's the crux of the spiritual counseling model. It's getting at the what is, and then really, really digging to those core beliefs. Because we're not always conscious of our core beliefs, are we? Took me years and years and years to get to the nut of one of my core beliefs that is the biggest speed bump still in my life. When my spiritual mentor starts to work with me on an issue or something and starts me through the process, I usually burst into tears and say, "Can't we just cut to the chase?" and lay my core belief out there. So I think we all know intellectually that we aren't responsible for or in control of what someone else thinks. Although we do like to manage that. But intellectually, we know that we're not in control. We're not in control of what someone else says or what they do. Bottom line is, we're just in charge of our own self. I am in charge of my own self. Can I hear that? I am in charge of my own self. And turn to the person beside you or in front of you or behind you and tell them, I'm not in charge of you. I know we think that's kind of funny, isn't it? Because I really want to be. But I'm saying out loud that I'm not in charge of you. For our peace of mind, it's vital that we get this at a very, 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 really deep, deep level. I'm in charge of my own self. Yes? One more time. I'm in charge of my own self. So as I see it, life presents a myriad of challenges. Not just in my own individual life, but in lives of you all that I know and love, some I know very, very deeply, and in our world. We seem to be, at least from my binoculars, we seem to be facing a whole heap of challenges. And the thing is, with this faculty of power, we can have dominion over how peacefully we choose to be with what is. What's that serenity prayer? Grant me to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Here's a quote from Warch. The greatest misconception about our gift of power is the belief that it is to be used over other people. I'm not in charge of you. Your consciousness or our consciousness is greatly troubled if we are controlling and manipulating others. It's an exhausting job. It is a sign of weakness, a lack of balance, and fear-based. Anybody relate to that? The danger comes when our attention is being constantly pulled to outer people and conditions rather than to the source of our power. A sense of separateness from God manifests in our consciousness, and all responsibility for inner adjustments and spiritual development are abandoned. When we are so focused on the outer and how we can change what somebody thinks, what they say, what they do, we are blind to our primary task in life, which is being in charge. This is time and a half, this job. That's why I lay awake a lot at night. So all spiritual development is abandoned. Your well-being never depends on others. My well-being depends on no one. It is useless to manipulate people. Fruitless, useless. Place your attention on the way you use your thought and word and how closely they align with the presence. This is how you develop your awareness of power, not by controlling others. Hesselbeck, in his book Power Up, that he wrote with Reverend Cher Holton, I have a tickly nose. Hesselbeck said that we use dominion to master those divine ideas. Remember the formula, mind, idea, expression. So we use dominion to master divine ideas that make it possible for us to be the best person we can be, that make it possible for us to be the best expression of Christ that we can be. And Hesselbeck points out that we can use divine power not only in the sense of creating, but also in the sense of dismantling error beliefs, error thoughts, right? There's a whole myriad of ways that we can exercise our dominion. There's affirmations, there's denials, there's prayer, there's gratitude, there's praise, there's meditation. And what I appreciate about this Power Up book is that they cover the various levels of consciousness in which we use our dominion or our power. And the lowest level is called the subconscious. It's sub because we're not so conscious and aware of it. So when we're not conscious of our underlying beliefs, we're still using dominion and power. We're just using it at the very lowest level, which is to gain power over someone. So that's using it unconsciously or from triggered subconscious beliefs. At the second level, we're using it at the conscious level, but we're using it in our human personality experience. So we're aware of this idea of mastery and power. It's just that we're operating from our own human consciousness. So the third level is consciously connecting with Source, which we heard in these processes and this application. That's our first step to really activating this divine power, this dominion. And that is connecting with Source, connecting with mind, idea, expression. And using divine power is rooted in knowing divine law, knowing principle, and knowing divine ideas. So the person who studies the metaphysics of ideas, divine law, divine principle, and consciously invests energy in exercising what we know in everyday life, that person is activating divine power, divine dominion at the very highest level. Here's a final quote from Charles Fillmore. He's talking about that phrase, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." He says, man can never be free until he declares his freedom. Man can never be free until he declares his freedom. And there's an example of how a denial might come into action. If I'm living with a physical dis-ease, a medical malady, then my denial is about this condition of, let's say, diabetes. This condition of diabetes has no power in me. We don't give our power to this dis-ease that we've named. Whether we're using Source and we're using the divine law of creation knowing that we are created in perfection. So that's one example of declaring our freedom. Jesus said, I'm from above. It's the prerogative of every man to make this declaration, and women can make it too, to make this declaration and thereby rise above the constrictions of mortal thought, that second stage at which we activate divine power. He says, then do not fear to develop your power and your mastery. When you think about people who've had really deep opportunities to exercise freedom, one of the people that comes to mind for me is Viktor Frankl, Nazi concentration camp prisoner, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. So yesterday, as I'm preparing this message, I clicked on Facebook because that has nothing to do with preparing this message. And it's a fun little distraction when I'm kind of, between thoughts. So I click on Facebook, and you know how you get those memories from X number of years ago, and here's something you posted X amount of time ago? Here is the coolest quote that I posted 3 years ago by this Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. Think about that. Between outer event, outer condition, he said, she said, they did, this happened. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. I have the freedom, I have the power, I have the dominion, I have the mastery to choose my response. So between stimulus and response, there's a space. In the space lies the freedom and power to choose our response. And in our response lies growth and freedom. I invite you to inhale this phenomenal idea. Settle back into your seat, and I'm going to repeat the quote one more time as we allow Spirit within us to integrate what we've learned, what we've heard this morning about mastery and dominion, and how it demonstrates our freedom. So settle back into your seats, connecting with the energy of silence, connecting with the great vibration of life, law, love, divine mind, divine principle, spirit, source, substance. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies my freedom and my power to choose my response. In my response lies my growth and my freedom. And as we sit in the silence this morning, we invite Spirit, Source, life. We quicken and activate our faculty of divine power, knowing that we truly do possess in every moment, in every situation, we truly do possess a divine ability to choose our core beliefs, our thoughts, our feelings, and most of all, the ability to choose the vibration of the spoken word that we release in our universe. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. And so that power is. And so we let it express as us, in us, and through us. Amen and amen. Okay, that's a big one.
To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
The light of God surrounds us.